Peace and love, my hippy-dippy denizens of Schmicago. Welcome back to Broadway by Ghostlight. I'm Mark Bonanni, and I don't know how they do it, but Schmigadoon just keeps getting better and better with every episode. From magic bread and parables to urchins and justice cleavers, this third episode of Schmigadoon's second season was pitch perfect. And don't even get me started on JANE KRAKOWSKI's big number. Holy moly, I am so sad that we are now halfway through season 2. 6 episodes is not enough, Apple TV Plus.
I want more.
There is so much to unpack this episode, and I'm gonna break it all down for you as best I can. My pal Joey, aka Drunk Broadway, is here, of course, with his top 5 moments from this episode, so make sure you stick around for that. But without much further ado, let's hop on that happiness bus to Quick Street and break down episode 3, Bells and Whistles. This episode was written by the very funny Julie Klausner. Miss Klausner wrote and starred in the FX comedy series Difficult People, along with Billy Eichner, and has also appeared in the shows The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel and Fosse Verdon, among others. She was also a co-writer of the Schmigadoon Season 1 episodes Lover Spat and Cross That Bridge.
Love her. Love, love, love her.
And hoo boy, Miss Klausner has started off this episode with an Easter egg palooza. I'm sure a lot of you out there caught them too, so let's go through them all one by one.
That's what I'm here for.
We see the storefront for Sondheim's expensive children's playthings with no orphans allowed. Of course, a nod to musical theater master Stephen Sondheim.
Then Stephen Joshua Sondheim.
Last episode borrowed from his landmark company in 1970, and this episode will go deep into his masterpiece Sweeney Todd from 1979. Next is Schwartz's Happy Family Portraits, a nod to Stephen Schwartz, whose musicals include Pippin and Godspell, big influences on this season, and of course later would write the mega hit Wicked, starring our Miss Codwell, Kristen Chenoweth. I'm sure in season 4 or 5 we'll get some schmicked in there. Then there's Herman's Hummable Tunes, a nod to Jerry Herman, composer of the 60s musicals Hello Dolly and Mame, among others, which we haven't really touched on this season. I mean, you can't fit in every show, but Jerry Herman's 1984 hit La Cage aux Folles could definitely pop up next season, universe and Apple TV Plus willing. The wording of this storefront is quite deliberate here, I think, referencing the little Broadway scandal where in 1984, when Jerry Herman's La Cage beat out Stephen Sondheim's Sunday in the Park with George for Best Score, and in his acceptance speech, Herman infamously said this.
This award forever shatters a myth about the musical theater. There's been a rumor around for a couple of years that the simple, hummable show tune was no longer welcome on Broadway. Well, it's alive and well at the Palace.
We later see that Herman's Hummable Tunes is closed and boarded up, so not saying, I'm just saying. Also, the street sign we can see here is for McDermott Lane, a nod to Galt McDermott, the composer of Hair. Certainly a big inspirational show for this episode. And finally, we see Ebb and Company Apothecary, a nod, of course, to Fred Ebb, who, along with writing partner John Kander, wrote the scores to Chicago and Cabaret, huge influences on this season, obviously, but also over a dozen more shows, including Kiss of the Spider-Woman, Steel Pier, The Scottsboro Boys, and Woman of the Year. Ebb's partner John Kander gets his own storefront with Kander's Absinthe Cafe, which we saw earlier this season. I also love that it advertises Dizzy Water, a Prohibition-era term for alcohol, usually vodka, but seems like a very Kander and Ebb thing. And our mischievous narrator is putting up wanted signs all over town for escaped convict Josh. The poster says he's wanted for murder, escape, and jazz. It also says Josh is armed and extremely dangerous, which we all know isn't true.
We are both very anti-gun. Josh is actually afraid of guns.
Well, I'm not afraid of them.
Well,
and the narrator says this funny line.
And Melissa's found a clue. Scooby-Doo.
A swipe at Melissa doing some snooping a la Scooby-Doo. I also love his face as he walks off camera. Titus is so funny and so good in this series. What a great addition to the cast. Melissa goes to see ace lawyer Bobby Flanagan to show her the notebook she found at the end of last episode, but Bobby informs her of Josh's escape. Mel opens up to Bobby about her recent struggles, and Bobby does her best to console her, but gives her some hard truths as well.
There's very little I can't do, besides bore people, or look bad in literally any kind of suit.
No, not that. This.
But the truth is, your hubby really hurt himself with this bonehead jailbreak.
Melissa is terribly worried for Josh, but Josh is doing just fine. He wakes up outside, greeted by Topher's troop of disciples, and with a full head of hair, because you can't do a hair/Godspell segment with no hair, right? When he's first woken up, one hippie says, "Good morning, Josh Shine," a reference to this lyric from Hair.
Good morning, starshine.
Our sort of lead trio of hippies are Alex, played by Alex Gullison, Marissa, played by Marissa Gold, and Michael, played by Michael Deliva. This is an amazing meta joke here with the hippie characters named after the actors playing them, because in the musical Godspell, except for the characters of Jesus and Judas, all the other parts are usually just named after whatever actor is playing them in that production. Also, Alex Gullison is a former Schmigadoonian, being featured in Cross That Bridge.
Find that guy, and get that ring, and get that ring.
Josh asks if they're in a junkyard, which they are, another Godspell reference, where in the 1973 film version, the troupe hang out at a hippified junkyard as well. That's how they get all their makeshift props and costumes for their parables. More on those in a bit. But you can see everything is brightly painted with hearts and peace signs, and it's all very Godspell. Plus, they have grown a huge amount of devil's lettuce there too. Well done. Let's take a moment and acknowledge the costumes for this episode and all the others as well. Really outstanding. Just like the show, the costumes pay homage to some iconic musical theater and film costumes, and yet are their own just as worthy things. Really well done. Bravo to costume designer Angus Strathey and the whole wardrobe department. I want to mention Michael's costume here in particular, a clear nod to the Judas character from Godspell, who originally wore an old-fashioned military type vest, but as many of you mentioned in the last episode, his vest here in Schmicago definitely seems to be a little nod to Enjolras from Les Miserables, played in the film version by our Topher Aaron Tveit. Josh asks if the cops are after them, and the group all bemoan the corrupt Schmicago police, and one person in the crowd says oink oink, but the way they say it is definitely a nice callback to season 1.
Down with oink, oink.
Boing, boing.
And just like Melissa did with Bobby, Josh too opens up about his recent struggles here. But Topher has the perfect solution and fulfills a large portion of Schmigadoon's viewing audience's dreams with the song Everyone's Gotta Get Naked.
The answer is crystal clear.
So lend an ear.
Everyone's gotta get naked.
I'm sorry, what now?
Get back to the way we were born.
This is mandatory?
A lot of the songs this season have been sort of one-to-one parallels of different iconic songs. Kaput, Mein Herr, but this song seems to be more in the vein of season 1 songs, where it's more of the vibe of the period as opposed to a direct reference. There's some Age of Aquarius from Hair, especially in the choreography, which I can't wait to discuss with Chris Catelli in a future bonus breakdown. It also sounds to me a little like Light of the World from Godspell.
We all need help to feel fine.
Let's have some wine!
You are the city of God. You are the city of God.
And of course, the whole getting naked thing is a reference to the legendary nude scene in Hair. Honestly, I could do a whole video on the history of the Hair nude scene. It was so blown out of proportion, with a censorship case involving that scene even going all the way to the Supreme Court. But the infamous scene was very brief, very dimly lit, and really, as Josh points out later in the episode,
it was more like locker room naked.
At the start of the number, we get these really fun references to another big 1970s musical, Grease.
Flooby wubba nudie, Rizzo chow chow doodie, Flooby nooby wiki, Zuko and Kaniki.
The tribe mention Rizzo, Cha-Cha, and Dooley, and then Zuko and Kaneki. Very funny. Also, Aaron Tveit was Danny Zuko in the Grease Live television event in 2016. This whole gibberish words section is another reference to the song Good Morning Starshine from Hair. As with the previous episode, several of our hippies are returning core dancers from season 1. I love how many season 1 cast members are returning. A couple returning performers here I haven't yet highlighted are the incredible Amanda Cleghorn and Gray Monshka. Josh sings for the first time in this episode. He, of course, didn't sing at all in season 1 till the very end, so I'm glad he's getting into the musical side of things this season. I love this hilarious shot of Marissa lifting her skirt while sitting on Michael's shoulders, definitely giving us all this very funny visual clue to a different set of hair. Josh and Topher strike a similar pose later in the scene as well. It's just a very hairy season. Another thing I'm really loving about this song, and all the songs in particular, are the orchestrations and vocal arrangements.
Let's get back to the way, back to the day, back to the way we were born.
Oh, so good. Besides, of course, composer Cinco Paul consistently bringing the goods, I also want to acknowledge the incredible music department. Scott Reset, Doug Besterman, David Chase, and the whole music division, bravo to all of you, truly. I'm obsessed with Topher's line, "Flowers don't wear pants, so why should we?" It's just so stupid and hysterical. There's also this blink and you'll miss it joke when Michael very excitedly says,
Even our wieners!
Now watch it again, but look at what Topher is doing.
Even our wieners!
He's definitely suggesting he has a big old
Venus!
But now we leave the peace and love commune and head over to Schmicago's seedy Quick Street. We see the stone archway for Miss Codwell's home for unwanted orphans with this hysterical crying angel on top. And we finally meet Miss Codwell herself, played of course by the legendary Kristen Chenoweth, who played the tight-lipped Mildred Layton last season.
Very different, yet somehow still mean.
Here, Miss Codwell is clearly a mix of two iconic, psychotic musical theater characters. The first is Miss Hannigan from Annie. Miss Codwell runs the orphanage, clearly has little love for her wards, and mentions her tub being full of bathtub gin. But when she starts singing her song, it's clear the second influence is Mrs. Lovett from Sweeney Todd. Her number, The Worst Brats in Town, is a clear homage to The Worst Pies in London, Mrs. Lovett's first number from Sweeney.
Good day, miss. Looking pretty, looking lonely. Looks like you could use a child, or two, or three.
What you rush, what you hurry? You gave me such a fright. I thought you was a ghost half a minute. Can't you sit you down, sit.
And I should also mention, aesthetically, it's also very Oliver, especially with the inclusion of boy orphans, and Oliver does indeed fit with our Schmicago time frame opening on Broadway in 1962. Miss Codwell even mentions urchins, a term often used to describe the Oliver orphans, in one of my favorite triple rhymes in this song.
If by any chance you're searching for an urchin, I got your merchandise right here.
I also love that some of the orphans are literally just kicking a can around in the background. Kills me. And we see that 17 Quick Street is indeed the location of Butcher Dooley Blight, whom Miss Codwell clearly fancies, just like her Mrs. Lovett counterpart. I love how she punches the word butcher here. It's so random and so funny.
Dooley Blight the butcher.
The butcher. And we get a quick shot of the top of Dooley's shop where it says meat cut fresh almost every day. One quick Easter egg right at the end, we finally see Weber Street. Weber Street at some point intersects with Lloyd Street, which we saw in episode 1. Of course, a nod to Sir Andrew Lloyd Webber, whose musical, Jesus Christ Superstar, does indeed make a referential appearance this episode.
But it's not where you think.
And we head back to Josh and the hippies at the Commune. Josh is going through a tribal initiation, which is just getting your face painted. A very similar scene occurs in the Godspell film where Jesus just paints everyone's face. One woman in that scene in particular is getting yellow sun rays around her eyes, very similar to the ones Topher sports in Schmicago. I'm obsessed with this line reading from Topher.
I could try painting it again. Can never get the eyes right.
I don't know why, but it just kills me. Aaron Tveit is so funny this season. Also, if you look at the eyes on Josh's smiley face, you can see that they are a bit wonky. Sorry, Topher. The tribe tell Josh they fight social injustice and people like Octavius Krat. But even though they've been getting naked and telling parables for months, nothing changes. Josh tells them there's probably much better ways to protest, and to prove him right, they perform the parable of the lamb without a flock.
Who was caged away from other sheep by a cruel shepherd.
Baloney. I do not want to be alone.
Oh no, I already hate this.
This whole parable section is a perfect send-up of many similar parables from the musical Godspell.
Otherwise, he'll hand you over to the judge.
Guilty!
And the judge to the constable. And you'll land in jail.
From the bad puns, to the makeshift costumes and props, to the dated celebrity impressions that Josh rightly describes as
Truly in the ballpark.
It's all so good. These actors could actually do a production of Godspell right now. Back on Quick Street, Melissa enters Dooley's shop and is greeted by this terrifying screech from his door. This is a reference to the equally terrifying whistle at the beginning of Sweeney Todd. And speaking of Sweeney Todd, we officially meet Dooley Blight,
The butcher.
a clear stand-in for the infamous demon barber of Fleet Street. And he launches into his own version of Worst Pies in London, but instead of Miss Codwell's Worst Brats in Town, Dooley sings The Worst Brats in Town.
Wonder why? It's my supply. The meat that's tough and dry. Yes, these are probably the worst brats in town.
Jesus Christ superstar, Cinco Paul is a genius.
He really is.
Dooley says his brats are mostly filler from the miller. A miller is someone who uses a mill, shocking I know, to grind wheat or corn, things like that. So at least his filler is edible, for the most part. And soon, Dooley sings the song I'm gonna call A Butcher and His Wife, which is very much a version of A Barber and His Wife from Sweeney Todd, where we learn Sweeney's backstory.
There was a butcher who had a wife and daughter, and a rich man who led them all like lambs to the slaughter.
There was a barber and his wife, and she was beautiful. A foolish barber and his wife, she was his reason and his life.
Dooley's backstory is very, very similar to Sweeney Todd's in that show. In Sweeney, the evil Judge Turpin has Sweeney wrongfully imprisoned so the judge can be with Sweeney's wife. But when she died, the judge sets his sights on Sweeney's young daughter.
Ooh, uncomfortable with that.
It's a twisted tale for sure. And if you know the show really well, you know I'm leaving out some things, but I don't want to spoil anything for anyone who hasn't seen the show yet. Anyways, the only big difference here is that Krat killed Dooley's wife, Daisy, for spurning his advances, and then Krat framed Dooley for the murder. Midway through the song, it starts resembling another Sweeney song, Epiphany.
I'll heed the call. Kill them all.
They all deserve to die. Tell you why, Mrs. Lovett, tell you why.
In the orchestrations to Dooley's song, if you listen really close, there's this sort of ringing of a blade sound that really is a nice touch.
But the rich man truly will pay for his sins, and this time Dooley will be the one who wins.
I also love how serious this number was. I mean, there was the one in this scenario funny line, but for the most part, it was played straight, so to speak, and I really, really appreciated that. What's not so serious, though, is this family portrait, where Dooley, his wife Daisy, and young Jenny are all holding butcher knives. Also, it's clear that this photo was taken at Schwartz's Happy Family Portraits. And can we talk about the brilliant Alan Cumming in this scene? I'm gonna need to see his Sweeney at some point in the near future. Sorry, Josh Groban. Melissa gives this funny response to Dooley's revenge plot set to music.
First of all, oh no.
It mirrors Josh having the same reaction to Betsy's youth last season.
Oh, and over yonder, there's the special tree that my papa planted the day that I was born.
Oh, no.
And his line about naming his cleaver and the little look he gives is so funny to me. I was dying.
I shall call this my Justice Cleaver.
That's a good name. Listen, Mr. Blight.
Dooley makes Melissa promise not to reveal to Jenny that he's out of prison and back in Schmicago, and when Melissa tells Dooley she'll keep an eye on Jenny for him because he reminds her of an old friend, we hear a bit of Alan's season 1 song, Somewhere Love Is Waiting for You. Very sweet.
Let's just say you remind me of an old friend.
And Alex shows up to take Melissa to Josh, and I loved when Melissa hurls this insult at her.
Oh, I don't think so. Birthday clown allergic to bras. You're taking me to him now.
Back in the Commune, Josh, Topher, and the tribe are enjoying some wine and magic bread, not unlike the Last Supper. Again, a random little moment I'm obsessed with. Aaron's line here about the bread, for some reason, just kills me.
That's the magic of the tribe, Josh.
And of what Michael put in the bread.
And of what Michael put in the bread.
Who?
And Melissa shows up very disappointed in Josh, though he gives her an excuse very similar to the one she used last episode.
You broke out of jail?
Okay, yes, that was a big mistake, but they all really wanted me to do it, so I kind of got caught up in the moment.
Right, Elsie and you being framed.
Yeah.
I know, I'm so sorry. I think I got caught up in the glitz and the glamour of it all.
And of course, Melissa is a total square and harshes the vibe before taking Josh back to turn himself in. Both Keegan-Michael Key and Cecily Strong were so funny in this scene, between Josh stoned off his ass.
Right, Josh?
That's right.
And Melissa trying to fit in.
But you know what? Sometimes you just gotta say heck it. Shooby-dooby. Am I right?
Such good work from them. And now we're at the Schmicago courthouse for Josh's very expedited trial. Josh is back to normal, having lost his hair.
And the drugs.
We see 2 women gossiping, and these are 2 more Schmigadoon Season 1 cameos. These women are Catriona Murphy and Katrina Reynolds, respectively, both of whom were featured in the song Lovers Spat last season. The judge is seen holding up a newspaper that reads, "Guilty, probably." Below that it says, "Josh Skinner is a bad, bad man," a fun little nod to Annie Get Your Gun and the song I'm a Bad, Bad Man. And below Josh's picture it says, "This is Josh Skinner, deviant and certainly guilty, most likely." There are several other fun Easter eggs featured in this newspaper. There's a headline saying Schmicago City Square Fountain, not Fountain of Youth. I think a reference to the opening number in the Godspell movie. And next to that, there's an ad for Bacharach Instruments, a nod to the late great Burt Bacharach, pop music icon and composer for the musical Promises, Promises, which I think we're going to get a bit of later in this season. We can also see an ad for Layton Overalls, a nod to Mildred and Howard Layton from last season. And then Bobby Flanagan makes her glorious entrance into the courtroom from the ceiling, definitely taking me back to when Miss Krakowski starred in the 2003 revival of 9 and made a similar spectacular entrance from above. She approaches the bench using the famous behind-the-back Fosse arms used in several iconic Fosse numbers. This one is Bobby's favorite though, she busted it out last episode as well. She then launches into the epic Bells and Whistles.
Bells and whistles, we'll get them all. Although the purists they may scoff, all you need are bells and whistles.
Oh man, so much to unpack here. So, the song in look and feel and sort of situationally is very much Razzle Dazzle from Chicago, the song Billy Flynn sings about how
it's all a circus. A 3-ring circus. These trials, the whole world, it's all show business.
But musically, the number is much more in line with the song Dance 10 Looks 3 from a chorus line, more commonly known as Tits and Ass.
Tits and ass. dress, bought myself a fancy pair, tightened up the derriere, did the nose with it, all that goes with it.
But of course, there's also this rapid-fire patter section that's straight out of Sondheim's Company and the song Not Getting Married Today.
Thank you to the judge and all the members of the jury. I will try to make this brief because I know you're in a hurry. See my client, the defendant, Dr. Joshua D. Skinner. He was merely at the club to take his darling wife to dinner.
Pardon me, is everybody here? Because if everybody's here, I want to thank you all for coming to the wedding. I'd appreciate you going even more. I mean, you must have lots of better things to do, and not a word of it to Paul. Remember, Paul, you know the man I'm going to marry, but I'm not because I wouldn't ruin anyone as wonderful as he is.
Miss Krakowski absolutely dominates this number. Holy cow. She nails the choreography and displays seemingly every special skill on her resume. There are so many great little moments in this song. A couple of my favorites are when she crosses her fingers when swearing on the Bible, and I also love when she roller skates by blindfolded, portraying Lady Justice. Also though, I think a little nod to Miss Krakowski's first Broadway show, Starlight Express, when she was just 18 years old. And of course, this moment here is a bit of We Both Reach for the Gun from Chicago. And there's also some definite Hot Honey Rag choreography thrown in there from Chicago. I can't wait to speak with Christopher Catelli, the choreographer, about it soon in a future breakdown. The jury foreman reads the verdict, and hey, it's Amitai Marmestein, who played the oft-hurt Pete the Milkman last season.
Hey there, Pete!
And if you look at the end credits, you can see his name in Schmicago is Skeet instead of Pete. I love it. I was really hoping we'd see Pete this season. And all of Bobby's bells and whistles, plus her comprehensive knowledge of the law, works like a charm, and Josh is acquitted of all charges. Thanks, Skeet. Our Joanne is back as well with her famous line. It's so fun to have Pete, last season's running gag, in the same episode with our new cameo to look out for, Joanne. In my Schmigadoon headcanon, Joanne is now Skeet's mom. Just throwing that out there. Melissa and Josh sure seem to think they've gotten their happy ending, but from the look of our narrator, this is far from over. Plus, you know, we've got 3 episodes left. Titus is really scary this season. So ominous. I'm really loving it. Speaking of scary, yee honk, Patrick Page's Octavius Krat gets a great villain song here.
You swore everyone would blame him and that you could easily frame him.
This is a combination of the character of Caiaphas's solos in Hosanna.
Tell the rabble to be quiet, we anticipate a riot.
Including those iconic minor note trumpet blares we hear later in the same song.
But your plot was all for naught.
And the end of Krat's song sounds a lot like the end to the song This Jesus Must Die.
Maybe we can kill 2 birds with one, birds with one, birds with one stone. Die, Miss Jesus must, Jesus must, Jesus must die.
And of course, it's also a bit of Judge Turpin's song, Joanna from Sweeney Todd, complete with some good old-fashioned self-flagellation.
Why do I want the women who don't want me? I only want the women who don't want me. Like so young and soft and beautiful. God, deliver me! Leave me, Joanna, Joanna.
When we first see Krat, he's reading a newspaper, and as we've already established, the Schmicago Tribune staff works at lightning speed as it's already been updated since the trial, and now reads, surprisingly, not guilty. Under that, it says, Josh Skinner, no longer bad man, and under his picture, it's been updated to say, surprisingly not deviant, and certainly not guilty. Below that, there's a headline that reads, Naked Protest Fails to Enact Change, of course referencing Topher's troupe. There's also a bunch of new musical theater Easter eggs hidden in the newspaper. There's an ad for Stein & Sons Fine Scotch Whiskey, spelled S-T-Y-N-E, a nod to Julie Stein, composer of several scores for Broadway classics like Gypsy and Funny Girl. And below that, I couldn't make out what they make or sell, but this is definitely an ad for Strauss and Charnin something or something. Charles Charles Strauss and Martin Charnin wrote the score for Annie. Charles Strauss, of course, also wrote the scores to many other shows like Bye Bye Birdie and Applause. I love this set for Kratz' office too, with that ornate K stained glass window behind him. And Kratz seems to have moved on from Jenny and has set his sights on Melissa. Ruh-roh.
Scooby-Doo.
I love this bit with the narrator referencing how Melissa has apparently kept her last name after getting married.
I must say she's intriguing, this Melissa Skinner.
I believe she goes by Gimbal.
His looks to the camera this whole season are giving me life. And the episode ends with that beautiful deep voice from Patrick Page. So good, so scary. I cannot wait to see where this goes.
You and me both.
What did you guys think of this third episode? I never in my wildest dreams thought I'd get something that's a Godspell, Hair, Chicago, Sweeney Todd mashup, but here we are, and I'm so grateful we have it. But with his top 5 moments from this episode, let's throw it over to my pal Joey McDaniel, aka Drunk Broadway. Take it away, Joey.
Hi, I'm Joey Drunk Broadway McDaniel, and we're already halfway done with the season, and I'm not crying. You are. I mean, I'm fine. I'm really fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. Thank you, 5. Good morning, Josh Shine. The Earth says, let's get naked, even our wieners. Thank you to the gobbledygook talk that led us into a perfect choreo, cinematography, vocals moment to open up episode 3. And I know it's later in the episode, but when Topher tells Josh to fight the power, I both teed and heed. Oh, and Josh, thank you for using the same exact words that I use when I'm forced to go see another Friends production of Mamma Mia. Oh, you really did it! So much energy! I mean, the only one he didn't use that I use is, oh, that lighting was really interesting. Thank you, Hannigan Lovett Codwell, for welcoming us to Sweeneyland. Note to self, open a theme park called Sweeneyland. I mean, the meat pie food stall alone would make a killing. Anyone else think of Hairspray and Nicest Kids in Town when she sang Worst Brats in Town? I don't know why I'm thinking of Hairspray during Sweeney, but here we are. And double, triple, quadruple Joey points for bringing back the ever-so-powerful Chenoweth snort. Holy wowzers! Alan's Dooley's Sweeney absolutely blew me out of the water. The dark horror earnestness of it all, the vocals, contrasted with Melissa's comedy, is everything I wanted. Everything. This one scene was a better Sweeney than the Sweeney movie starring Captain Jack. Sorry, not sorry. Oh, and to the artist who put the little baby Cleaver in the family portrait, thank you. I see you. To be honest, I considered giving all 5 thank yous to Bobby and her whirlwind of a number. I mean, inside of this razzle dazzle, we've got tits and ass, bells and whistles, we've got skates, we've got trapeze, we've got I'm not getting married today, we've got the splits, we've got fireworks. I mean, aside from corn pudding, this is maybe my favorite moment in entertainment in years. Oh, and Joanne, I'll drink to that, comes back. This is truly my happy place, and I am so glad to be there. So, I had all week to think about what song is Patrick going to sing for us, and my thick, nearly unusable brain didn't come to the obvious conclusion of putting that amazing bass voice to use with Caiaphas notes. Duh! It's just so perfect. And while he's singing the lowest of the low, flogging himself Judge Turpin style, I mean, come on, does it get more deliciously evil than that? The thank yous, the way to goes, the kudos, the snaps I could give you are not nearly strong enough to convey how perfect I think these choices are. But I'm still going to say thank you. And a special thank you goes to you. Yes, you, the one with the playbill collection and the opinions on cast recordings. I love gushing about this show, and I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. So I'm glad we could do it together. Cheers, friends.
What do you think is going to happen with Melissa and Krat? What will happen to Josh? Let me know your predictions in the comments. I love hearing what you guys think. Some of you guys send me some really interesting things that I hadn't thought about. You can also join in the fun Schmicago conversations over on Twitter and Instagram, where I'm always talking Schmigadoon and musical theater. You can follow me there at bwayghostlight. I have recorded some bonus dance Easter egg breakdowns with Schmigadoon choreographer Chris Catelli, like I've mentioned a few times. I'm working on editing those, so be sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell so you won't miss any Schmigadoon schmontent. And if you want to go one step further and really help support this channel, head on over to Patreon and check out the fun perks there. I'll be posting outtakes and other fun stuff like that there soon, and a special shout out to my amazing producer level patrons. I love you guys so much. Patreon is really great, but honestly, liking and sharing these videos with your tribe is so incredibly helpful in helping this channel to grow and having more people enjoy in the Schmigadoon fun. I really hope you guys are enjoying all this content and these breakdowns.
'Cause we're really putting a lot of effort into it.
But until next week for episode 4, this is Broadway by Ghostlight. I'm Mark Bonanni. Now, who wants to get naked?